Oh, I guess that's my cue, right? Once the recording started. Anyway, thank you guys for taking the time out on this Monday. It's raining here in Singapore. At least outside my house. Not sure where else it's raining, but thank you so much for taking the time this evening or this afternoon. So I will be going over a little bit more about funding societies and what we do. I think we've had a couple talks with INSEAD before. It's been very nice speaking with you. We've actually had someone intern at our Thai office before, doing something on partnerships, and hopefully we can do something similar with you guys. So not sure if you guys have really heard of funding societies before, but I will go into the details of what we do here. So primarily, we are a Southeast Asian company that focuses on short-term credit to SMEs. So we are SME digital financing. So if you've heard things like peer-to-peer lending and other digital financing solutions, that's what we give. So this cycle sort of shows basically our bread and butter. So we actually give, so there are two main, I think, clients that we give. So you have the SMEs. So there are small businesses in our local communities that need funding, and then we give that through investing them from the public. So people like you and me can put in a small amount to invest in these businesses, and then you get interest on that. So we actually do pay interest to people that want to look at alternative ways of managing their wealth. I'm just trying to get rid of my face here. It's very distracting for me. So what do we do that's different from banks? So you're saying, why can't businesses go to banks instead to get these? So basically what we do is we aim for the SMEs that are much smaller than what traditional banks and financial institutions would aim for. We give secured as well as unsecured products compared to banks that give mainly secured. And the duration for this is up to 12 months rather than 2 to 5 years. So we actually do ask for the repayments from these businesses much sooner than typical traditional FIs would, between 2 to 5 years. How we're doing this is we're able to digitize our process. We make it a lot faster. Some business banks give out loans that would take months to disperse. We actually give financing to our customers within 1 week. In some microloans, we actually give it within 24 hours as well. So this is very good for businesses that are a lot more nimble, and are also seeking funds to grow quickly. And during the startup ecosystem, it's actually quite important to get funding very quickly for the different business ventures that we have. So you're asking if we're competing with banks? I would say no, not quite. So every business has its own timeline of funding, and we are right in between what we call the micro enterprise to the large corporates. So when people start out with their businesses, they're probably getting they need funding from friends, some of their family members, other people. Some people would have angel investors that particularly believe in their product. And then when they get bigger and larger, they are able to apply for more corporate loans from banks. And when they eventually become multinational, they can go into capital markets for financing. But in the middle of that, it's when the initial funds sort of are running out, and they do need a little bit more cash to either sustain or also to grow in their businesses. We then come in that little interim as the peer-to-peer or peer-to-business financing. So other companies that do this are like Funding Circle, Funding Night out there. So as the statistic says, 300 billion, there's a funding gap of SMEs because they don't hit the criteria that allow them to apply for loans from large corporate or banking entities. So I think that's where our founders saw this gap, and that's where we're trying to provide this servicing to the underbanked people here in Southeast Asia. So as funding societies, we've been around for 5 years. We are the largest platform in the region. Some overarching stats. We are licensed and operating in Singapore, Indonesia, as well as Malaysia. We do have a small setup in Thailand as well. We only just got registered earlier this year. So that's something that's more of a budding project. Overall, we've funded over $1.76 billion worth of loans to businesses in these 5 years. And with that, I'm sure a lot of people are asking in the lending business, so what's our default rate? It's actually below 1.5% of defaults. So this is something that we have transparency over. If you want to take a look at these numbers over the next few months, you can just read on our website as well. It has all those details there. So within our community, there are 170,000 people putting their money and investing in these businesses. And the number of loans we've given out is around 3.1 million loans. In these 5 years, we've also grown to about 350 people across the 4 countries that I've mentioned. So Indonesia is actually our largest office. Singapore is our oldest office. And then we also have startups in Kuala Lumpur as well as Bangkok. So you can see these are the main 3 regions that we are operating and licensed in. So there's we're funding societies, Singapore and Malaysia. We have MAS as well as the RMO approvals. And Modalku is actually stands for My Capital. It's the localization of the Indonesian market, sort of a branding decision that we made to, I think, relate more closely with the small businesses in that country. Okay, so a little bit of our timeline. We like sharing this story. Our founders met in Harvard back in 2014. So one is Singaporean and one is Indonesian. So those are the main reasons why we started in Singapore and Indonesia. So they actually had met in school, and they were talking. They noticed that P2P lending was a concept that was new to them, that was in the US, and it sort of they found that there was a gap that wasn't explored at that point in time. And during the final semester, actually in the summer of 2015, they felt that it was quite urgent for them, or it's quite pivotal for them to start their businesses then. They couldn't wait to graduate. But like they said, like good Asians, they didn't drop out like Mark Zuckerberg or some of those other entrepreneurs, but they actually still went to school in their final semester. And while they did that, they went to class in the morning, but then they ran the business in the evening. So they actually hired their first employee in Singapore over Skype. So they were still in the US when they did that. That employee actually is still here. His name is Vikas. He's actually our senior commercial director in Singapore. So he's actually seen the whole how this company has grown since then. And so we were founded in 2015 and launched in June. Our platform was launched in June, and quite quickly after that, we launched the Indonesian version, Modalku, at the start of 2016. Our US series funding, our Series A funding was at 7 million, led by Sequoia in India. And that sort of gave us a lot more runway to expand. And the year after that, we launched in Malaysia. So that team is about 90 people at this point. And the following, we were able to raise a Series B of 25 million, and this was by SoftBank. And just so SoftBank and Sequoia have been, strong proponents of us, and they've been also helped us with our Series C funding this year, $40 million, as well as a couple other ventures like Line, as well as Alpha JWC. So we had also applied for the digital banking license. I know that's quite a buzz. This whole 2020, we were actually supposed to hear back from them at the start of 2020, yet because of COVID, they actually pushed that back. We only just presented our final round of the digital banking proposals in October. So we would be hearing either this month or next month on the outcome. Although I think, at this stage, we are part of the final round of candidates. So I would say our confidence is quite high that we would get that as well. And that would be particularly in Singapore. So once we have the licenses or when the licenses being given out in the other countries we're in, those will also be areas of focus for us. Yep. So you're probably also understanding that while we are onboarding and financing people, financing businesses through the pure P2P lending model, you're probably asking, do we have that many individuals that are putting money inside? The actual answer is no. So we don't have that scale, and we don't want to have that scale. because you can see as COVID has come up, a lot of people would be slowing down their investing. A lot of the individuals wouldn't be as such high risk aversion during these times. So naturally, that source of funding would decrease. So previously, and what we've had built, and the reason why we're still able to survive and sustain so long is because we've diversified that risk. So we've brought on institutional investors, so other partners, other banks and other creditors are also providing certain levels of funding and investments into different businesses on our platform. So we have both retail and institutional investors on our platform. And while we also have those, we also have a different set of investors ourselves when we have new markets or new products that we like to launch that are a little bit less tested. We actually invest some of our own balance sheet funding as well. So with this mixture of investors, we've diversified our risk and has allowed us to sustain depending on what market conditions there are. So all this investment goes onto our platform itself. So you can actually look at it in our app store. You can visit our website to download it. So as an investor, you'll also be able to onboard to our platform. And this allows the connection between our investors as well as the borrowers. So the investors don't see specifically who's borrowing money, but they get to see all the different platforms or businesses that are investing in terms of their financials, the directors' reports. So it's a very, very informed and educated way of investing. So it's not just giving your investments to a portfolio manager and crossing your fingers. So we do allow our investors to have some sort of level of control over what they're investing in. And then that leads to our borrowers, as I said, who are the small and medium enterprises that are also onboarding our platform. And we're also looking at how else can we diversify and add value to their businesses over more than just funding, whether we could give them other points that our technology could be leveraged on to help their businesses. Yeah, these are some of the awards and recognitions we've had over the past couple of years. I think more recently, we've had some of the accolades here. I mean, feel free to Google us as well. There's a lot about us, on the internet and on our PR platform. And at the end, so there's some social platforms that you could see join us on. We do have a blog active, as well as we're fairly active on LinkedIn as well as on Facebook. So do look out for those in terms of our announcements and other areas. Okay, so I'll take a pause here. Actually, I got a question from, so I'm just going to wrap up here. But Kenneth, I see your question, so I'll be answering that in a minute. So actually my final slide would be sort of on the next steps. So right now we don't have any, I think, sorted out opportunities here for MBA or midterm careers at this point. Of course, while we are scoping out our hiring plans for 2021, that would change naturally. And to keep updated on this, I encourage you to either add me on LinkedIn. That's my QR code for my LinkedIn profile. And of course, our career page is listed here. Feel free to also peruse that, as and when opportunities come about. Feel free to either contact me or apply directly on the careers website. So at this point, I would open up to the floor for any questions. So I would encourage people to put it on the group chat like Kenneth has done, so I can start with his. So Kenneth asked if, for the digital KYC screening for SMEs in emerging markets. Yes, I would say it's a mixture of both. So while we do have, of course, our own credit teams that do a lot of the credit assessment, the underwriting, they do have a lot more physical components. So they will be speaking with the directors. They will be doing a lot of site visits, and of course looking at the various documents as well. So there is a very rigorous process that we have that actually really is our livelihood, that we feel that our credit process has been robust enough to allow us to have such a small or low default rate, that even now during the COVID period, as markets change and businesses have much varying performances during these few months, that it's important that we as a business can really assess which businesses are creditworthy. That even means for those that we have lent in the past. In this current climate, they may not be as creditworthy as they had been. So it's important to keep that I feel process both digital as well as I think physical in that way, where we have a credit team specifically in each of those local markets that we're in to help with this credit assessment, both on the ground and digitally. Are there plans for funding societies to expand to new markets in the near future, both within Asia, but also in Latin America and Africa? Thanks for the question, Nikki. I think at this point, our focus would be on Southeast Asia. As I was sharing with Chris earlier, I'd say it's easier because then we don't have to change our tagline. But I think the focus has been on Southeast Asia. That's been the mission from our founders from the start. But thanks, Nikki, for that question. I think never say never. I would say the next likely region would be within Asia, less so in Latin America and Africa. But again, I would never say never, because you never know when the right partnership would come about, and the opportunity would always be there to strike. So yes, I would say not right now, but possibly.
Awesome.
Yep, and actually, so while I'm afraid I don't have any ready-made opportunities for you, as we are building out our hiring pipelines and what roles we do need for our business teams in the sort of quarters ahead, I'd like to hear from you guys what sort of opportunities you guys are looking out for at the moment. As you're preparing to graduate from INSEAD, is there any particular field or anything that you'd like to do, particularly in a fintech, that would interest you? Be happy to hear what the floor thinks.
Folks, you can unmute or you can put in the chat.
Oh, can attendants speak in this? Oh, that's so scary. Usually when I'm a spectator, I see it's just a chat enabled. Yeah, but happy to speak with anyone too.
How's the current with the COVID now? How's the business going? Is that I would assume there's a lot of customers asking for refinancing everywhere, right? I think that's the experience with my colleagues in Indo.
That's right. That's what I was getting at. It's tough when we're lending money, it's always about growth. It's always about how can we provide that opportunities for people. It's not meant to be a model where we give financing for distress financing, in order to survive. And we do look at the potential for people to pay back. We've been getting a lot of that, and thankfully with our credit underwriting process, we actually are able to I think assess quite effectively, and the numbers actually have been looking a lot better in the past 3-4 months from what we expected. So I think that's good, and that's why we can also look to hire particularly on our tech teams right now.
I see. Oh, speaking on tech teams, so if I remember correctly from my previous conversations, it's like half between Singapore and Indo, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And the business team, I think the biggest is in Indo. Singapore, I heard there's a business team, but it's not that big. Like
we have about 110 people here, and about I would say 40 plus of them are tech. In Malaysia, we have 90 people, and we have maybe, I think, so our QA, our quality assurance engineering team, as well as some of our product managers are there. And then Indonesia is actually closer to around 200, 150.
Yeah, the reason why I visited a couple of times to Modalku, and
in this one building, yeah, and then
yes.
Were you able to the 6th floor? Because that's a new floor that we had, the one with a lot of the yellow, and you take off your shoes apparently, and there's like grass.
Yeah, there's that part of the office. I came there early last year, and I brought a couple of my colleagues to visit
Nice. Yeah.
right there.
I'm not in that office, but on their behalf, I'm saying you're welcome anytime. Bye.
Oh, so this is, I think what Nikhil is saying is will resonate quite a bit with a lot of our MBAs looking for like
Okay.
partnerships, market expansion, new ways of leveraging existing tech and the frameworks to drive more value. I
Mhm.
think
Yeah, I think
most of the
that's a good point.
upper
Point,
sorry,
Nikki.
please.
No, no, and no, not at all. Thanks for sharing that. I think partnerships and strategy would always be, a good part of how we want to really focus on. I think with our P2P model having that growth, in the past 5 years and seeing how the markets are specifically in Singapore being a lot more competitive, and you're seeing a lot of sort of larger players coming into this space when you have banks, focus on SME marketing, SME banking, sorry, and you have people like Grab, doing sort of financing for their merchants. So there's a lot of recognition as tech becomes more prevalent for this space to be, having a lower barrier of entry. And that's sort of where we also have those looks at. We have a partnerships team, and of course they also focus on, what sort of partnerships can we bring, what sort of products can we sort of pivot into to keep our product suite current, for our customers, and if there are any other target customer markets that are out there, within the region as well as outside. So yeah, I think that if that's something that could get structured, and if there is a requirement for that, I think this would be definitely one of the platforms we would bring people on from. We actually have currently a partnerships manager who had previously interned with us. So he interned in our Thai office when we were 3 people. We've grown to about 5, and he's one of them that there now, focusing on building partnerships in the Thai space at this point.
Awesome. Like even in I think coming from Southeast Asia, funding societies is definitely the leading peer-to-peer lending. So if
Yeah.
folks, if you want to make impact for fintech, for inclusion in Southeast Asia, start the conversation with these guys. And
Yeah.
Kenneth
Yeah.
is saying on Philippines.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's honestly, when you're looking at the larger markets in Southeast Asia, people are probably asking why it took us so long to get into Thailand. As I mentioned, because our founders of Singapore and Indonesia, that's sort of the natural progression of things, and we actually had a pretty ready setup in Malaysia for us to partner with, and that's why we could enter there rather than from scratch. And Thailand, I think now the fintech adoption has been a lot better. So that was sort of the reason why it took us a bit longer to enter that market. And of course, the other players would be places like Philippines, Vietnam, the larger markets in Southeast Asia. So if we were able to prioritize that focus on market expansion, those would be the countries that we'd be focusing on. Cool. Thanks for that, Kenneth. I think if you have that, so would you also be saying in terms of a retail, but also in terms of businesses and where financing is something that they'd be looking for?
Yeah, I think in general, a lot of emerging online sellers, small SMEs trying to scale up, having clients in the UK and US.
Right.
So that's the trend I'm seeing, at least in the Philippines. And
Cool.
yeah.
Thanks, Kenneth. And not to, and in terms of your sense as well, actually that's interesting for Filipino companies having a lot of like Western clients. Are there any particular services that the Filipino market is being tapped on?
I think it's because English is one of our official languages. So a lot of American and UK companies would hire, Filipino creative designers, translators, and other services that they want to offshore. So the cost of hiring somebody from the UK and US to do the same job is a lot higher than hiring somebody from Southeast Asia. And that's an opportunity that a lot of Filipinos are actually grabbing on, especially with the pandemic. And Yeah, yeah. Philippines is known for sort of outsourcing hub. I think in the same way that India is also is one. So
Yeah.
uh, I think there are a lot of businesses who can benefit from this service in Southeast Asia in general. That's my view.
Cool. No, thanks for sharing your view, Kenneth. I appreciate that. And I'm sure the founders have it bookmarked, the Philippines, but I'll be sure to remind them of the need there, just in case we do want to, or we have the relevant resources to enter there. Cool.
Cool. Last 2 minutes. Any last remarks? Any last questions to come in? Cool. Okay, then I think we can wrap this up. Thank you so much, Jason, for the sharing and for the for the presentation on funding societies and Modalco.
Oh,
And
not at all. Thanks for having me.
And if if you want, if you have more question, you can contact Jason directly on his LinkedIn and check for the updated career opportunities in their website.
Yeah, that's right. Perfect. Thanks so much for having me again, Chris. And thank you guys again for your time. I hope this was interesting and insightful for you. And again, of course, the channels are open, so feel free to connect with me, and we can hopefully find some opportunities that align down the road.
Thank you. Let's stop the recording.